Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Today we want to do a review of EndlessOS. This was requested from the patron supporters. You can join me over on Patreon, patreon.com/TomM, T-O-M-M, or on thinklifemedia.com. So we want to look at EndlessOS, which has a goal in their mission to kind of reach the world with computing applications. They do have some offline features and tools which might contain large portions of like Wikipedia and other useful indexing type options for the internet. They also, though, have a simple basic, standard basic installation. And we want to have a look at it. There are definitely some pros and there are definitely some cons. Now, in my case here, just to give you the ending conclusion early, this is not a distribution I'm going to recommend, mostly on the basis that their EULA is extremely, extremely invasive and extremely corporate. And that type of thing kind of concerns me. But there are definitely some neat things about the distribution, and what I'd like to do is kind of walk through some of that. So let's start looking over at their website. You can head on over at EndlessOS.com. You can get all the information. You can see that there's not a lot of information about the OS. There's not a lot of information we can find other than just your basic corporate, about us. Computing is one of the greatest revolutions, yet it remains out of reach for half the planet. We created EndlessOS with a free, robust computing solution. So everywhere we have access to information. Our goal is to build a platform for digital literacy. They give us a link to a TED Talk. And other than that, I thought I was reading the About Us page. We have our advisors on our lists, but we don't know anything about the company behind it. We really don't know a lot about the operating system as well. This is what I do know. I believe it is based on Ubuntu. And they are using their own desktop environment, which is a fork of GNOME 3.8. And I believe they call it the Endless Shell. So we're going to have a look at what the operating system here looks like. You can download it, and if you head on over to the download button, you do have the options to grab a desktop computer, a virtual machine, or a Raspberry Pi. You'll see that some of these are massive, like 15 or more gigabytes, and these are the ones that are kind of designed for the offline. If you want your basic multi-language, this is your standard online basic computer. Now, I have heard some feedback from some of my followers there that indicate that there is an option to download this to allow you to dual boot it with another computer. Based on the information on the website I'm seeing right now and knowing that this operating system changes a lot in a short period of time, I don't think that's actually true any longer. If it is, someone please link it down below where I can grab an ISO that allows me to dual boot. Because what you do is you have exactly one option. You can run it from the USB stick that you're downloading on, or you can format your entire computer, which some people say also formats your BIOS as well. I can't comment to that. We're going to be looking at this in a virtual machine. So let's go ahead and I've already downloaded this. I'm going to go ahead and show you what the installation process looks like. And then we're going to go ahead and jump on into the first run and the review of the system. All right, so the installation of EndlessOS, this has got to be one of the most easy to install. However, you're very limited in what you can do. When you first boot this guy up, it's going to give you the option to try it out on a USB stick or to format your hard drive. If you want to install this alongside something else, you're going to have to install EndlessOS first and then install whatever else you want alongside it. So it asks us for our language, so that's good. And now we have just the option of try it on the USB stick, which is basically test it out right here, or reformat your hard drive. So you don't have any other options. If you reformat your hard drive, you come down here, you just use the existing edition, hit next, and then it's going to give us a check mark that we have to select the hard drive that we're using, agree to erasing all of your files and everything. So if you do want to sideload it, then you're good. But once you're done with this, if this is the only thing you want, or if you're going to do this first, or hey, if you're just spinning something up, that's all there is to it. You can, at this step, walk away. It'll be done. You'll come back and it'll just be like, hey, turn off the computer and you're all set to go. So we can see here on the very first boot of the system, we have a very nice full screen loading animation, which is just a very nice thing. So we'll go ahead and comment back more when we boot into the first load. All right, so after you first install the operating system, you are landed on a welcome screen. So this basically is an OEM install. As you saw from the installer, load it up, click the format, verify, and install. You can walk away. That simple. Makes it very easy. Unfortunately, it also means if you want to dual boot with this, you're going to have to install EndlessOS first and then install whatever your OS that you want with it later. We're going to select our language and click Next. Now we also have keyboard options. This is the first time I've ever actually seen a Mac keyboard option layout. That's totally awesome. You can help detect the layout if you want. I'm using basic standard US English. Now, this is the reason right here why I'm not interested in recommending this. We are going to accept this terms on this VirtualBox just for the purpose of the review, and then I'm going to uninstall this because I cannot agree to this. So on this basis of the EULA alone, I automatically would not consent to using this operating system. So we'll kind of walk through just some of the highlights. I did read all of it, but I want to just kind of point out a few of the highlights. First thing is they have a binding arbitration agreement. So no matter where you are, the binding arbitration is in effect. And part of this is you cannot bring any claim against EndlessOS or the Endless company in any form of class action lawsuit, which interesting that a FOSS application or alleged FOSS application, we shall say, has such a term. We do have license to software updates. This part, section 1.1 here, basically says we have the right and will update the system no matter what. You don't have an option. It's just going to force updates, and there's not a way to turn that off. That is, in and of itself, is part of a problem. You can copy and distribute it based upon the redistribution policy that they have listed there. The data collection, very much like Windows 10, there is a base level of data collection that you cannot turn off, and it is invasive information to a degree. So they collect the version of the operating system. They collect the information about the device the operating system is installed on. They have the approximate location, probably an IP address based location, how the operating system was installed, and how long the operating system has been installed. That is basically you cannot turn off. Additional information can be reported periodically to the servers for user metrics. To enable or disable the system, use the privacy settings in the OS Control Center. I'm going to see if that is turned on by default or not. I don't know. Data usage, it may process and use any data that it collects. Of course, they're saying it's anonymous, and we all believe that. But they're saying they will use this information and for third parties, limited, including but not limited to current and potential content providers, app developers, hardware manufacturers who ship the OS, investors, and that's a whole laundry list of people who don't really need to know that information. Obviously, they're going to tell you don't do illegal stuff with our system, and they don't allow you to do that. Language and localizations. Third-party and open source. So there is a lot of third-party tools baked into the operating system by default. That in and of itself is a huge problem. And basically, by using the software, you agree that anything they're doing is subject to their privacy policies, and you don't really have much of a say. There's some things you could do. You could possibly move some things around, but it's not going to be easy to do. As far as open source, while it is technically listed as a FOSS software application, I do note that they have this inclusion of the word some. Endless makes some of the open source available components available on the public GitHub account. That is some and not all, which means there could be things inside of this baked-in operating system that are not necessarily open source that we do not necessarily know what they're doing. They have a specific one for Google because Google is so baked into the operating system in and of itself. There's some GNU, source code request things, and indemnities. You agree not to hold them responsible for anything you do with it. And then there's disclaimers, warranties, that's fairly standard. Limitation of liability, that's fairly standard. And then we have our arbitration. So we have the arbitration, which does include a no class action lawsuit, which is highlighted over here. They have their enforceability. If it becomes, If the section on no class action is found to be unenforceable, or if the entity is found to be unreasonable, then the entirety of 15 shall be null and void. In such cases, parties that file exclusive jurisdiction venue described in section 18 shall govern the action arising. So governing law, basically where you happen to be. State of California, unless otherwise. We're going to turn this guy off, and we'll go ahead and hit the accept for the purposes of a review. We're going to skip. And then here we have the ability to set or to not set a password. So we're just going to go ahead and not set a password, and then we are going to boot in. Now, on the first installation, it's going to automatically start installing a few software packages. It's going to install LibreOffice, Google Chrome, and one other application. I can't remember exactly which one it is. If you boot up the App Center here, you can see it's grabbing Flatpak metadata for information, and then we're going to be able to see the applications that are installing and the applications that are available. Okay, so as soon as we land on this, we can see that already it is installing Google Chrome. Check our installed applications. It's doing Google Chrome. I think Hack is going to update itself. LibreOffice is going to update itself. You can see here it is now installing updates automatically to LibreOffice, Hack, and Google Chrome. So it's working on those updates there. It is going to, we have the option here. It says automatic updates on. Let's see if we can actually turn that off or not. So down here, you can, I guess, disable automatic updates. That's something I did not realize was there. Let's check the privacy, since I wanted to double check over there. They said that you could change things in the privacy settings. Location services is on by default. I want to turn that off. We have camera, microphone, Thunderbolt, and here is metrics. Metrics services turned off. No anonymous data service will be sent. So that is off by default. So this actually is confusing to me now, where their EULA basically said there's going to be a bunch of stuff turned on, but now this part's turned off and it says no anonymous usage data is going to be sent. So I'll leave it to some security researchers who look into this and find out, with this turned off, is it still sending other information or is it not? Based on the EULA, I think it is, but based on what I see here, I think that this is just the optional portion. So I think that it does still have that default. So if somebody can comment who's actually in the security realm that has looked into it, I'd be very interested in hearing about that. All right, so those are all done. You can see right here, search Google and more. Let's go ahead and search for something on Google. What it's doing is it's going to search your default internet app, which actually is set to Chromium, not Chrome for some reason. But on the first run of Chrome, what it did is it went ahead and installed AdBlock Plus, which is right now known to be basically spyware. So it's adding effectively spyware to your computer without. It is setting the default search to Google. My guess is that if we go ahead and change our search settings for this, then you can probably change that around. So let's go ahead and change our search settings. So indeed, it will actually search with whatever your default search engine happens to be. And so there I was actually able to get to search on DuckDuckGo instead. It does do Google by default. All right, so let's have a look at the rest of the desktop over here. So we have a variety of applications. A lot of these are websites. We're going to look at the problem with adding websites to this in just a moment. What I would like to indicate here is you can actually create folders by dropping applications on top of each other. And if you actually do that, you can now click into here and edit the name of the folder if you want to. In this case, Office is a perfectly fine thing. But here I can go ahead and do this and say, spyware or whatever here, because, yeah, why would I want to use either of those, really? But these are actually their website applications. So I can go ahead and remove these. If you remove everything from the folder will disappear. You can add new applications, and this is always going to add up the App Center, where you can install a variety of different things. You just search down for whatever application here you might want to install. So if I want to use an archive manager, click on this, hit the Add to the Desktop button, and now that is going to be added to your desktop. So you have the ability to add those right there. Now, we have serious limitation when it comes to adding websites, because the number of websites that they give us is actually very limited. It says says here, write the website you'd like to add here. Well, if I want to add any old website, and this is very significant because if I wanted to use this in an education type environment, which is exactly what their target market is, nearly every school type system nowadays is going to have their own online learning platform, and they would absolutely love to add this to their desktop. It actually says it doesn't exist or is not available. Well, it turns out that the only things that exist or are available are the few items that they give us here. So if it's not listed as one of these websites, you can't install it. Now, I'm going to point out some intriguing, I'm going to call it bias here, and I'm not trying to get under anybody's skin or discuss any politics or anything else, but why don't we have CNN, which is very, very, very blatantly, clearly a one-sided news organization, but we don't have the popular, well-known biased news organization on the other side. That to me looks like the system possibly has a little bit of bias to it. We also have things like BBC, Forbes, New York Times, Google News, but we don't have a lot of other things out there. Maybe you want Yahoo News, maybe you want MSNBC, maybe you want a lot of other news organizations, but you're limited to 5 of these. And there are 5 of these which all tend to lean in one particular political view, which to me is kind of a problem. Particularly if you're talking about an education type focus, then education actually requires a little bit of balance in what they present, because education is, let's see all of the information and let's see which one makes the most logical viewpoint for us. But for them to come out and say, these are the viewpoints we accept, I have a problem. As far as entertainment, we do have, we got Tumblr, we got WhatsApp, we got YouTube, Telegram, Pinterest, National Geographic, Instagram, Google Books, pretty much all the Google and Facebooky type services, but really nothing else. There's, there's some education stuff. We have TED lectures. We have the free dictionary from Wikipedia. We have about.com, things like that. We have some basic sports stuff. I'll leave it to you guys if those are good or not, because I don't really know anything about sports. But as far as installing and adding websites to your desktop, you're limited to exactly what they want you to have. And I find that that's a little bit limiting and maybe problematic. All right, so there was one review out there, and this is probably just a limitation of the older system, which said if you wanted to run, watch like MP4 videos or something like that, you couldn't. Indeed, on the basic system, you really can't install codecs. There is actually, if I remember correctly, if I go to the EndlessOS website, there actually is a spot for multimedia codecs. So let's go ahead and go to their main website here. And if you check in their footer, there was a codecs option down here at the bottom. Let's see what we see. Audio and video codecs down here at the bottom. Now I have to sign in for this. So I actually have to create an account with EndlessOS to sign in and create them. Now I did test this earlier. I don't have it here, but I did test this earlier by downloading a MP4 document here, and it will not allow you to play it on the Chief system, but it does tell you, hey, go ahead and install VLC and you'll be able to play it. And indeed I was. So you do not necessarily have to purchase the multimedia codecs or sign in. Just go ahead and download VLC or any other video player that happens to come packaged and bundled with its own codecs in there. So you might say, well, why don't I just go ahead and install some because I know what I'm doing? Well, if we do sudo apt update, then what we're actually going to see is it's going to ping out on us because the system does not want us to use sudo or apt or anything else like that. So as you can see here that it's going to fail to fetch anything. We can't actually drop to a sudo prompt. I'm just going to do sudo-i here in this case. Let's go ahead and see if we can actually do some basic sudo stuff, because as long as I can actually get in here and if I can get in here and access just some basic system files, then hey, I could actually probably come in here and add new repos and things like that, but that's going to be probably your option. Let's do 127.0.0.1 and facebook.com. Let's do facebook.com though. 7.0.0.1 www.facebook.com and exit. So apparently I can actually come in here and do some sudo things. So the system's not entirely locked down, but it's going to make it a little bit more difficult. You're going to have to go in there and manually configure apt packages and things like that if you want to do anything more than the system wants you to do. Meaning that the system is going to be very secure. This is one you can be confident that you can give it to your grandparents who don't know anything about computers, and for sure they're not going to break it. That is absolutely for sure. They're going to have a decent experience. I find that overall, the environment itself is a little fun. It's just, to me, it's a little bit too normie and a little bit too leaning in one particular direction rather than another. Rather than being a center balanced, it definitely leans. It tends to focus and want social media, social accounts, things like Google, all these types of things, which is okay in the terms that a lot of people are using those services, but not okay in the terms that, hey, maybe if you're talking about education, maybe you can teach us that there's other alternatives to Google on the internet. That would be a neat thing for an education focused based distro to do. So those are kind of my various thoughts, my various comments on EndlessOS. As I said, based on the EULA alone, I wouldn't recommend it. But now when we get into a lot of the system limitations that we start to see inside of here, I become even more leery of the system. It's so chock full with your Facebooks and with your Googles and with your big tech first world type stuff that, to me, it feels like if this is the thing that's going to be used to share the internet around the world, I feel very terrified for the future of the internet on the world. That's kind of my take, because if we're talking about education, let's educate people that there's a lot of different options. Let's show people options other than Google, other than Facebook, other than these other options. So let's have news options that present both sides of the stories and allow people to have a balanced view or a balanced opinion as much as that is possible. Those are kind of my thoughts and my takes on EndlessOS. Again, this was a request from a patron supporter. You can find me over on patreon.com/TomM. That's TOMM, or at thinklifemedia.com is my own personal support page. With all that being said, guys, thanks for coming along, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.